Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, good afternoon to those of you in Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces, and good morning to any of you joining us from the Prairie Province and beautiful British Columbia. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. It's something of a first for Baxter Travel Media, what we hope will be something of an ongoing series of Ask the Expert sessions that Well, January has certainly been an interesting month. The media coverage that has followed the grounding of the Costa Concordia on Friday, January 13th, 2012, has definitely focused a lot of attention on the cruise industry. Unfortunately, in some cases, it's the kind of attention that any industry can do without, and it's left many of you asking a lot of questions. The most open-ended of these is a simple one. What do I tell my customers about the safety of cruising? With that in mind, Baxter Travel Media has joined forces with Encore Cruises to present today's question and answer webinar, Cruising, the State of the Union, featuring well-known cruise industry expert Vanessa Lee. Definitely multi-talented and multitasking, Lee is the President and CEO of Cruise Strategies Limited, which promotes luxury and niche cruising, the owner and publisher of Cruise and Travel Lifestyles magazine. She's also a columnist for Travel Industry Today, and she was a founding partner of Encore Cruises. To start with, Vanessa will offer all of you tuned in today an overview of the current state of the cruise industry. And in that overview, she'll put the whole issue of the safety and security of cruising in perspective. She'll also take a broader look at cruising and talk about the opportunities cruising offers to travel agents who are looking for specialized niches that provide new revenue streams and new opportunities to grow your businesses. And finally, Vanessa will look into her crystal ball, something every good godmother carries with her. I can see it from where I'm sitting, to give you a glimpse of what the future of the cruise industry might look like. After that, she'll take your questions, and I'm sure that you will all have some, because I know that I certainly do.
Me today, and I would like to say hello, good morning, good afternoon, bonjour, to whatever, to everybody who's participating in the webinar today. I have to admit, this is my first webinar. Can you imagine? At my age, I can still have a first.
Well, I hope everybody will be gentle with
Yes,
you, as the saying goes.
And what I would like to make sure is that we do have a participatory session here, and if anyone wants to write in at any time, we're happy to take their questions in any way, order, or form. So, has the cruise industry hit rough seas? Yes, I suspect we have, yes, unfortunately. But we've hit them before. I've personally been in many rough seas over the years, 60-foot seas, hurricanes and tsunamis and all sorts of things, and we always survive. And I think that's the thing that we have to focus on the most, is that the survivability of the cruise industry. It's remarkable. It's only 40 years old. We go through a lot almost every year in this industry, and it's still one of the most successful out there, and it's also one of the most, I think, for the guests, rewarding experiences. So, what next? What would you like to ask me next?
Well, it's perhaps not all dark clouds and whatnot. I noticed that the National Post and Ipsos Reid joined forces for a survey today.
Right.
And the news is quite positive.
Yes, I read it too, and they did, I think, some kind of survey with maybe 1,000 or so, just over 1,000 people, and 71% of them said that they would continue to cruise. And I believe those that said they did not want to cruise or might consider not cruising were people who perhaps had not cruised ever before. And
what about agents dealing with clients that are a little bit confused about some of the things that they've read about this? I mean, how would you advise people to deal with that kind of situation?
You know, I was thinking about this, Bob, and one of the things I think that every travel agent has to deal with a lot is that there are still numerous people that have never cruised and think they don't want to cruise, or they're on the fence. So just because this particular incident happened doesn't mean that this is perhaps the validating reason. It's the current reason, but it isn't the overwhelming reason. So I think travel retail professionals have to consider how they excite and energize and innovate a customer to want to cruise, regardless.
That's the obvious question. So
Yeah.
how do you
How do you
excite
do that?
your customer, and how do you shift, I guess, their attention away from what was to what
Yeah.
should be?
And I think you have to break down the myths, because people think that cruising is X, not Y. And many people out there have heard only of the big major brands, and they're all great brands. But some people say, I don't want a big ship. They don't think there are small, beautiful ships out there. They don't realize that there are sometimes river ships, although they're getting much more profile, so hopefully they do. I think they don't realize the length and breadth of the business of the ships that are available to them, the type of how many cruise lines there are, how many sizes of ships there are, and how many places these ships go to. So some people may want to go and stay in a very big high-rise hotel in Mexico, for example, and be thrilled with that vacation. Others may want to go into the jungle. They may want to go into Borneo. They may want to go to South America. They may want to stay in a very small boutique hotel. They may want to go to a villa in Tuscany. A villa in Tuscany is very different than a high-rise hotel in the Caribbean or in Mexico. So we have to be very sure that everybody understands in the cruise business how much choice there is to offer the guest. And we don't offer the guest that.
Yeah, and I guess for me as a journalist, not working front line all the time, it's a case of how, as a counselor, do you determine what's right for your client?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was at a party last week, and as everyone does at parties, they ask you what you do, and then, oh, we're in the cruise business, okay. I don't want to go on a cruise. And I said, yeah. I said, I don't know you that well, to this gentleman. I said, but I suspect you don't want to go on a cruise because you think they're all big and 4,000 people and you're going to have to line up. And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. He said, well, what cruise should I go on? And I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I think you are, although I've only met you 3 times. And I did. And I nailed him. He said, how do you know this? I said, because I pay attention to you, and I can see how you're dressed, and I can see what you seem to like. And I gave him 2 or 3 choices of ships that he would like. And he said, okay, I think I'm a convert. And I think that's what we have to do. You have to get to know the audience.
we've got a comment from one of the participants today talking about
Barry.
how safe cruising is, one of the safest ways to travel. I'm wondering, do you
Yes.
have any sort of statistics, or can you put that into perspective a little
Yeah,
for us?
and Barry, hi there. Thanks for your question. The key, I think, that came out in the last few weeks since this tragedy is that 99 point, so many % of people go on cruises and come off very safely. There's no issue. Even 99% of the people that were on the Costa Concordia came off the ship safely. Cruising is one of the, if not the most safest forms of transportation. Safer than air, safer than train, safer than rail, safer than your feet. Shank's pony, as they say. I mean, seriously, it is probably the safest form. So we have to consider that.
Okay.
And I think the other thing that we have to consider is when something happens on a cruise ship, we hear it. We hear it very loudly. It's reported. If someone fell off a balcony in a hotel, which they do practically every day around the world, we don't hear about it. The reporting stringency on, I don't mean to put down hotels or resorts. I'm not doing that. No, I don't want people to think I am. But the reporting for hotels and resorts is not the same as it is for the cruise ship industry. It is so highly regulated. That's why you hear about all sorts of things on ships. Some ships are small towns. They're villages.
Well, and I know you've been following CLIA reviews.
Yes.
They're doing a full-scale safety review. I take it that you consider that a good thing for the business and a good thing
Yes.
for everybody involved?
I mean, it's sad that this had to happen so that people then had to take a safety review. But I think in any industry, when things occur, it is wise to take safety reviews and to consider the practices and to find best practices to ensure those best practices are still logical and practicable and that they should be emulated where possible. If one brand is doing something better than another brand, and we know that the cruise industry shares their best practices through CLIA and the ICCL.
Yeah, I noticed we got a comment from Linda Ralston at Marlin Travel, and she notes that she's booked a Carnival Dream for March break. She also points out that if you were in a car accident, you'd drive again.
Yeah, and we've all probably been on planes where things happened on planes, but we get on planes again. I mean, people survive. The survivability of of everybody, we're all resilient. So that's what we have to consider here. Our guests are resilient.
So maybe we should move forward, and you could help me out because, or you help our listeners out and talk a little bit about the cruise industry, or the cruise business, and give them some advice on perhaps how they could expand that business.
Yes, sir.
Give us
Sorry,
some
and I
tips.
just saw one question from Henry. Perhaps you could address that first. Do you
Sure,
mind?
no problem.
Henry, that's a good question. Henry says, I guess, can everyone see that Henry's question? They can, can't they? Yes, Henry, if a ship is sailing from various ports around in Europe, such as Costa, where they would embark and disembark guests practically every day in every port, they do have a requirement within that 24-hour period. They don't necessarily muster everybody, but they give them a safety demonstration. They might do it in the stateroom, but usually the cruise line takes the guests to an area, the newly embarked guests, like a dining room or a part of a deck or something, and they go through a muster drill with them there. And I was speaking with MSC Cruises about this the other day, and that's exactly what they do. And bearing in mind, on the Costa Concordia, there were maybe 400 or 600 guests that had just embarked, and they had not yet gone through muster, but apparently all the other guests had or should have. And again, I pointed this out a few weeks ago. It's everybody's responsibility to know what to do in case of an emergency, no matter where you are. If you're sitting in a theater or a cinema, if you're on a plane, you pay attention, you know how to get out or get off, preferably. Norwalk, you want to talk about Norwalk as well? See that?
Yes.
Again, Susan, who was it who asked
Arlene.
about Norwalk?
Arlene Kirby.
There aren't as many as you think, number one. And the second thing I would say is, again, because the cruise industry is so highly regulated, that I think it's 3%, don't quote me on that, I may not be correct on the number, but if 3% of the guests and crew on a ship get sick, they have to report it to the Center for Disease Control because it's a contained space. No other industry requires that to be done, which in a way is a good thing because it's highly regulated, so it's positive. The negative is it has to be reported. I've been in hotels where everybody got food poisoning, but no hotel has to report that because they're not under those conditions. And we all know that when people get to ships, they usually have come from planes, and things incubate on planes as well. So this is the concern about, and if guests ask you about this, it's still very rare. The cruise industry is taking going to enormous lengths to protect people. Captains on some ships now won't shake hands with guests at the captain's party. They won't because, for the first 24 to 48 hours, I was on a ship I was on Azamara in August in the Med, and instead of going to the buffet and helping yourself, they had staff serving you for the first 24 to 48 hours to ensure that if anyone did have any kind of sickness, that there was a cold or a flu, that they weren't accidentally infecting the person next behind them in line. And I asked the chief medical officer on board about this, and she was quite interesting and told me that this had really worked well. So these things are being taken into account.
I know we're jumping around here a bit, Vanessa, but Monique Paymont's got a question about client insecurities and cruising these days. She's wondering if cruise pricing is likely to go down.
I have to say that it's a bit scary, but if you look at cruise pricing today, and Monique, and you look at it 10 years ago and 20 years ago, you will find that pricing is very similar, unfortunately, to that which it was a number of years ago. Overall, cruise pricing has not grown that much. Clearly, the cruise lines, if they feel there's an impact to their business, they will put out pricing offers. They will put out sales. I mean, if we're going to get stuck into all this, let's go back to 9/11. I was at Encore Cruises, and we were all, I remember we were all absolutely petrified. All of you were, and we were. And what were we going to do to get the business back? And we came up with a campaign at Encore in that time frame, about 3 weeks after 9/11. And we did it too low not to go. What's your price point? Yeah. So I think, everybody responds.
Okay, that's good. I want to back up a bit because we missed Linda Kyle. She was asking about a safety drill that she had on a cruise ship in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It took them an hour and a half to get one lifeboat in the water. Is there anything that you could suggest to agents or their customers in terms of what they should do in a situation like that? Is there a complaint process or something if the safety drill's not done in the proper way?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the situation is about being alongside in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Maybe they were having a problem with that particular lifeboat and they were doing a safety drill because they thought there was an issue with it. I don't know. I doubt that if you're alongside in San Juan, there's a reason to put a lifeboat out.
Okay.
But often, what the ships do is they have safety drills every week on board the ship, and I'm sure many of you who've cruised, you've been on the ship in port when they're doing a safety drill, or even at sea. I've had them pretend to throw men overboard when I've been at sea, to go and get them. Fire drills, all sorts of things. And sometimes they do things purposely, so they will pretend the lifeboat is stuck, or they'll stick the lifeboat. The captain and the officers will, and have the crew figure out how to fix the problem. So that may have been that situation. I don't know.
It's a drill for the crew rather than the
It's a drill for the crew, and you never know what the captain and his officers are doing on the navigation deck to test the crew to make sure that they can take care of a situation. And this happens all the time, and they all have to keep going back to school to learn all these things and to be retrained. The safety drill on this Northern Italian cruise line, that troubles me, but I can assure you, I suspect from now on, that will be completely changed. People shouldn't have this kind of thing happen in vain.
Moving on, I just wanted to and a lot of these agents that are here today seem pretty experienced in terms of the cruise business, but those who aren't, how do you build a plan to sell cruises? I mean,
oh my goodness!
Sail into those waters. Well, open-ended discussion.
Yeah, I've been teaching people for 30 years how to engage people to sell cruises. I think one of the things is if you offer a cruise, the first step is to offer a guest a cruise. People will probably consider it unless they're terribly seasick or they've got this thing about cruising. Australia, why can't we offer everybody who walks in pretty much a cruise? Why can't we consider offering a cruise? If you offer the first thing that a guest asks for, it could well be the wrong thing, and I think every good travel agent knows that. I mean, sometimes people are dead set, they want to go to this hotel, they're not going to take anything else, fine, as long as you counsel them to try and get some semblance of if this is suitable for them, fine. But I think if you don't offer, how can you be refused? So you have to at least sort of float the idea out there as to, well, have you considered a cruise? And let me tell you about the different types of cruising. And people will say, yes, I've considered a cruise, but I don't want to go with 4,000 people or something, or I don't want to, play bingo and fold napkins all day, or play shuffleboard, or I think everyone's old or something. And we have to address these concerns, because some of them are valid, let's face it. And
cruise lines offer. I mean, do you have your little Vanessa's cheat sheet on what type of passenger or what type of customer each cruise line appeals to? I mean,
actually it's in my brain, which is kind of sad.
Would you like to share that?
That's why I have such a busy brain.
Yeah.
All this stuff is floating around. Clearly some people want busy. Some people want the vibrancy of big shows and lots of activity and lots of bars and meeting people and choices of things. Some people don't care if there's an ice skating rink on board or a rock climbing wall, and others, if they're going on a family vacation, they love that kind of thing. Some people, like I personally prefer small ships. I like a quieter ambiance. I like a sort of social camaraderie. What do you like, Bob?
I like to sit at home in front of the TV. Is
No,
there a cruise line for me and watch sports? No.
But, everyone's different. So, yeah, I mean, you have to, I think you really have to Ask the experts, whether it be your local DSM or RSM for the cruise lines. You have to know what the products are out there, and you have to engage with your client or your prospect and discern things about them. And you can usually, I think, ask 5 or 6 key questions. Like I would say to you, I don't think you don't like dressing up, right?
No.
No. So first of all, you don't want to put on a jacket, never mind a tie, and you certainly don't want to put on fine dining. And then you can look at the choices that ships offer for dining, which are now myriad.
Well, and I take it you'd agree that the first step is to offer it, but the amount of repeat business from cruise sales really sort of
Huge.
Builds your business, and then you
And
develop that
referral.
roadmap.
I mean, 90+% of people who cruise will cruise again.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's such a broad array of cruise lines now and ships and styles of cruising. I think the key is the styles of cruising, right? I mean, you've got Norwegian Cruise Line that came in a number of years ago with freestyle cruising, which was completely casual. You would suit that in that sense of that you don't have to get dressed up. They don't tell you where, when, and what to do, how to do things. And there's, 10 restaurant choices on board in Norwegian. I'm not allowed to say NCL because I have to pay $10 to Kevin Sheehan for his charity if I say NCL, so I've just paid him $20.
Okay, actually, talk to Emily, she'll pay us. All right, I was going to, out of the Canadian market, I guess one of the competitors for cruise is obviously the all-inclusive business. I mean,
Certainly.
All-inclusive packages are so entrenched in this market. Maybe you can offer some suggestions on how you differentiate the two. I mean,
Seven-day vacation to get sun. Many all-inclusives are obviously in warm weather, and it's very much a beach vacation. And there are times when we all want to go and hang on a beach and just do nothing and drink too much and read books and snorkel. And I love to do that too. But I would say to you that cruising offers a wider range of activities and choice that you will really get on most ships, very, very fine dining. We were talking about this before the webinar started, in fact, Bob, about how Vegas reinvented itself with all their restaurants and their celebrity chefs. And cruising, many cruise ships now offer phenomenal choices of dining and really superb dining. But there's also experiential things going on ships. I mean, you can learn a second language. You can learn, if you've just bought an iPad, you can go to iPad classes. You can go on to Celebrity, who has their relationship with Apple, and you can take classes and learn about Macs. You can do very many different things that are very rewarding and enriching, so that you're not just taking your 7 days out of your life to perhaps go and get a suntan, which you can, of course, also do, but it's a more in-depth experience, perhaps. Never mind destination.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And along with the experiences, the one thing I've noticed, and this is, it's become, I mean, it's theme cruises. There's like a theme cruise for virtually everything, including Turner Classic Movies, which is a favorite of mine.
There you are. We're honing in on the right cruise for you.
How I don't know. It's my question. How do you sell that, or why have these things become, these theme cruises become so popular?
Well, I think, the audience is diverse, and there's an enormous amount of interest. I mean, when scrapbooking was so popular back about 10 years or so ago, there were scrapbooking cruises, for goodness sake, and all these people racing around madly with their bits and pieces of scrapbook. There was a malt cruise I was just reading about recently, and people were doing their bebop 50s thing, and I mean, it's amazing what people enjoy doing, and God bless them for it. Square dancing cruises. I mean, a lot of, obviously, music-oriented themes, whether it be, groups from bygone days or current groups or types of music. Jazz is big on ships. And baseball cruises. I used to do, with Encore, we did the cruise with the Blue Jays. Yeah. I met a whole bunch of these great baseball players, and it was marvelous fun. And if you have an interest in something, I think it's a great way to actually convince people to try a cruise for the first time, because if they are if they're very into a certain theme, this could be the closer.
We haven't talked much about group cruising. It's how do you put together your group for your cruise, and who are the lines that do a good job and that kind of thing?
Oh, I think almost everybody now, especially in the mainstream contemporary and premium brands, they do very well with group cruises. And if you can get a Pied Piper, I think it's great. But again, with travel agencies, if you've got a following, if you've got a good client base, I suggest that people take cruises themselves. Come and sail with me, come and join me, or come and join this person who's taking this cruise here and this one there. And to be the Pied Piper yourself if you've got a focused audience in your agency, because that develops a better rapport. There's more loyalty from that client. They're less likely to go and shop you on price. If they've spent dinners with you on a river ship cruising down the Danube or something, or you've taken them somewhere fabulous and taken care of all their needs and really looked after them and shown them some fabulous sights, and it's never the same again. And we all know from going on fam trips with people over the years. I see everyone's still talking about all this
Safety stuff. Yeah.
all this safety thing.
Good group, and they've got a lot of good ideas
Yeah.
for both of it.
Yeah, we're just reading some of your comments, everybody, about what you're talking about with the emergency thing. Does anybody have any other questions about other things rather than this safety thing? Because I do believe that all the cruise lines will completely address this, and I honestly believe that in a few more weeks it will not be such a topic, and I don't think most people who cruise are concerned about it. I really don't. I think this too will pass, sad as it is. Okay, so people are typing in some questions. Do we want to talk about other stuff in the meantime, Bob?
Well, I was going to ask you to look beyond the big blue sea, because you did touch on it, and talk about some other cruise options that are available, something that's
like
a
river
little
cruising.
Different. River cruising, the adventure cruises.
Oh, Barry just asked about river cruising. Thank you, Wenda, for agreeing with me, whatever it was I said. Yes, river cruising. Well, I have been a proponent of river cruising for a number of years now, and I think it's wonderful to see how many ships are being built in river cruising, how diverse it is becoming. And again, I don't think it's a young industry now. I would say it's beginning to mature. We've got ships that are being built to go on the Mekong River between Vietnam and Cambodia. We have AMA Waterways, who is doing a ship on the Zambezi. They didn't build it, but they're taking the ship. So you've got a Zambezi river cruise in Africa, which I think would be fabulous, marvelous fun. You've got more and more of the river cruises going into France, as opposed to just coming in through, the Main and the Danube and the Rhine. You've got the resurgence, and we mustn't forget this, of American rivers, and you've got two new products coming out this year on the Mississippi. One of which is the American Steamboat Company and American Cruises, I forget the other name, but one of them is building a new stern wheeler based on tradition, and another one is a revamped ship, one of the Delta Queen ships. So those rivers are coming back. It's interesting. It's quite diverse. And the one thing I find really fascinating about this, they're all trying to figure out how to put balconies on these river ships. And what is a real balcony? And how big is this balcony? And is it just a sliding door with a little, or am I going to actually get a balcony? Do I need a balcony? I'm not sure you need a balcony on a river ship. And so everyone's rebuilding and putting new things on. So it's not just the same old river ship. We've got swimming pools on river ships now, which has never happened before. We've got a cinema on river ships.
And lots of gambling, I'm sure.
No gambling, unless it's the Mississippi, I guess. I don't know. So I think this is a huge market. And if people are not grabbing onto river cruising, no pun intended, of course, but they are missing that proverbial you-know-what.
A question about booking periods, I believe, up there. How far in advance do you book?
Book at least 1 year to 1.5 in advance. Yes, so the best price in the group, I would say try and book at least a year or so out to get a good group rate. It takes a while to get the group together often. These guys, you're all going on about your different, this is great to see all these comments coming back in and out. What does everybody think about river cruising out there? Tell us what you think. I'm hoping that you're all jumping onto that particular bandwagon as well. And Bob, other than river cruising, I would say that expedition cruising, niche cruising, expedition cruising, small ships going to very, very wonderfully fascinating, far away places that perhaps people have thought that they might like to get to but have no idea how to. And I think that's something that's coming up more and more so, especially with the aging baby boomers.
Okay, we got a question about cruising, river cruising, and it's not for older people. I think is one of the comments.
It's not?
That's the way I'm reading it.
Tons of older people are on river cruising. In fact, I think that's the issue with river cruising is that it was primarily for an older audience, and it needs to get younger, and it is getting younger. I've been on a couple in the last year or so, and there were a lot of people in their 50s and 60s. There were some in their 40s, some in their 70s, but I would say the average, the 2 decades that were most there were 50s and 60s. That's not old, but it's
just you need to be mobile.
Yes, you do need to be mobile, absolutely. Mm-hmm. There's only one elevator, and it's not, and it's the rolling on and off at port. So the river ships certainly cannot do as much as the big ships can for people who have some handicap. Maybe if they're in a wheelchair or they just aren't mobile. Yes, Barry, correct.
And now you're going to talk about the future.
I am?
The future of cruising. Where's it going beyond all this we've discussed? What do you
Gosh,
see in your little crystal ball?
If I really had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be here.
Oh, thanks a lot.
I'd be bouncing around with orangutans in Borneo or something. I think part of it we've already discussed. I think the aspect of cruising, which is one of the most remarkable things about cruising, and one of the things I love the best, is that it's such an innovative industry. And so who would have thought 10 years ago that there would be a ship, 2 ships like Oasis and Allure of the Seas from Royal Caribbean, and that they would have the middle of the ship cut out, and that there would be a Central Park boardwalk and 14,000 living plants and flowers. I mean, I wouldn't expect to have been zip-lining on a ship. I wouldn't expect to be dining in some stunning restaurants that perhaps in New York City or LA or Chicago would cost $300-400 a couple, and be able to buy that on a ship for $30-40. I wouldn't expect that I would be so entertained by some things on ships that I would, that I would have all of these things at my beck and call. It just isn't 7 days in the Caribbean and get a suntan anymore. I think cruising can take guests to some of the most remarkable places in the world and give them truly insightful experiences, very rich and very rewarding experiences. Ships can take people to places that they might otherwise not feel that they wish to go, but yet they have a safety feel on board because of the language being spoken, the food that they can eat on board. So they may want to be slightly adventurous, but they may not want to go charging off into a jungle or something without having a safety net to come back to. And I think the other thing is that many cruises can help people give back. That you can go to places which, I'll come back up to Borneo. This is somewhere I really want to go, and I want to see where the orangutans are being sort of brought up, but being put back into the forest and being cared for if they're orphaned or they've been trapped. Or, and I think those things that you can go and see, like Camp Leakey, and you can help. Or you can go to parts of Africa and do a safari and see things there that, pre or post a cruise. So cruising isn't just 7 days in a stateroom. I think it's so much more these days. And I think they'll keep surprising us. That's what my crystal ball says.
All right, we've got Doreen.
Hi, Doreen. Doreen is asking, as everyone can see, about changing the policies on the NCF portion of the cruise sale. No, I do not believe they will do that. Essentially, no. I think what you can do as an industry to help is to sell more pre and post, more add-ons. This is where groups come in, where theme cruises come in, where people are doing their own things. insurance sales. I think you have to wrap things up now more so and add unique content. And I think that is one of the ways that extra income can be made.
Meredith says sell higher categories. Makes sense.
You know what, I used to have a seminar and presentation thing that I used to do years ago, and it was always sell down, not up. And I would say to travel people, and many of you have probably sat and listened to me riveting on about this for years, but if you offer someone an inside stateroom and they accept it, you're done, because they're going to take that inside stateroom. You can't then say, oh, sorry, silly me, I shouldn't have offered you that, because I can actually get you an outside for only $100 more. I start at the top and I work down. That doesn't mean you have to offer everyone a deluxe royal suite, but you should always offer an outside stateroom, because to the kids who are across the hall from the parents, or the in-laws maybe, or if it's the last room on the ship kind of thing. But I always say, if you start high, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't quite afford that, all right, you can go down. You can't go back up. It's hard.
I guess one of the concerns, or one of my observations, is that everybody sells cruise these days.
Rob Mackey saying, sorry, I still do sell down, not up. Yes, thank you, Rob. Well listened to. It's very unique, Rob. Sorry.
Everybody sells cruise these days. Everybody sells preferred. Have we?
Do you think?
I don't know.
No.
Have we? It's kind of like it's all out there. And when agents started originally selling cruises, it was all about to be different and to find higher revenue sales.
Yeah.
What's the next step? Because there's got to be a next step. How do you get beyond? How do you get out of the pack and lead?
Well, you have to do interesting things. You have to offer a diversity of ships. You have to look at other products. As I said earlier, cruising is, you can have 25 people on a ship or 5,000 people on a ship, and you've got practically everything in between. The cruise lines will continue to innovate and to innovate the product, and will continue to build ships of all sorts, because that's what they do. So what you have to do is decide which of those products are going to suit you. Where do you want to put some effort? Stop selling just the regular normal thing to everybody, and branch out and find out about these other ships and these other cruise lines that can maybe attract an audience that perhaps has had enough of a certain type. We need to grow more. We need to bring more cruisers in at the entry level. We need to convert people from land to sea. But as we've got thousands and thousands, hundreds and thousands and millions of people who've cruised on a lot of certain brands, maybe it's time to move them along. And if you don't offer choice, your competition will. So you can never stand still. But, you know, a lot of these people who are writing in, I know them, obviously. Worked with some of them. Many of them have been my clients for years. And I've seen what they've done to create interest and awareness. And it's like, go out and do this. Do something that Barry and Rob do, for example, breast cancer cruise. You've got to go out and do things that are very meaningful to you, and therefore your passion is contagious, I believe.
Do you want to answer Rob Mackey's question? Do you think it would be a good idea for the cruise lines to adopt non-refundable deposits similar to Carnival's ESR in the future?
I'm not mad about that one. I don't know that that's a good idea, and it's. I mean, I know you say in the future, Rob, and yes, it would have to be in the future because it certainly isn't going to be right now. I'm not a particular fan of that. I think we have to still be very competitive in the marketplace, and some of these non-refundables, I think, are just an annoyance. Susan, your question, do ships have surveillance cameras? Yes. There are surveillance cameras everywhere on ships. There are also wonderful little people hovering everywhere, taking care of. There are weapons on ships. that the crew and the safety officers and people carry just in case of any, so ships are very highly surveilled, much more so than your average little village, shall we say. And we,
Now, I'm just wondering if anybody has any more questions?
otherwise I think we're going to get close to wrapping up, so your time is running out. Bob, anything else you want to cover off?
I think I'm good, unless you'd like to make some closing remarks to tie it all together.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
No, I really actually don't. I just appreciate everybody's time. I think we've covered a wide gamut of commentary here, and will there be a river cruise spam in the near future? Start selling river cruises, and I'm sure or start one yourself. But anyway, everybody, I really appreciate your interest and your participation, and hopefully we've covered off some helpful topics, and clearly you're all conversing with each other here, which I think is one of the most interesting things anyway.
And I'd like...
You're welcome, Jeremy. Oh, hi, Samuel. You're welcome.
I'd like to thank you all for participating. It's been great. Lots of questions. I really liked the dialogue that was going on. I thought that was great. I want to thank Encore Cruises for being our sponsor. Great. You're out in front of that, guys. Much appreciated. And I wanted to let you know that this is going to be being recorded, has been recorded, and you'll be sent a copy of it. I'd like to thank our producer, who I've just appointed a producer, Emily McClung, for taking us through this and taking care of everyone.
Thank you, Emily.
And stay tuned, because there'll be more Ask the Experts, and keep watching and join in, and check out Canadian Travel Press Facebook page, and you can tweet and retweet, because Emily will take care of you there. So thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. I
Thank
see
you,
all
Vanessa.
your names coming up, and I know you, so many of you, so I really appreciate your input. Thank you very much, and thanks to Encore for hosting us.